Right, Neil, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good, good. And we're going to have some fun today. We're going to look at some more articles that have come up from the world of belief and non-belief. And one of your favorite topics we're going to tackle first, conspiracy theorists. The article we're going to read is Conspiracy Theorists Really Do See the World Differently, a New Study Shows. And we spoke a bit about that last week, the fact that you are always having a run-in with conspiracy theorists on Facebook and in the street. And
serendipity, I guess, that this came up this week, although
Yeah.
people who believe in that sort of thing would say it was fate.
Let's just have a look at the article first. And I'm going to ask you about your own fun encounters that you've had. So this comes from sciencealert.com. Conspiracy theorists really do see the world differently. To conspiracy theorists, the world is not what it seems. Invisible threads link seemingly unrelated concepts, and there's no such thing as a random coincidences. Researchers have been scratching their heads for years over what makes some people more conspiratorially inclined. Now, a recent study has finally tracked down one of the faulty thinking patterns. As it turns out, we all use it, but these people use it too much. Now, I gotta see if I can pronounce this. A team of psychologists from Vrije University Amsterdam, I'm probably murdering that pronunciation, in the Netherlands and the University of Kent in the UK, has determined that conspiracy theorists are hooked on something called illusory pattern perception. Now, this is interesting. So this study that was done in 2 universities, I wonder if these people who actually did it were so sick and tired of conspiracy theories that they thought, we're just going to see how these people's mind works. Because it does sometimes seem that these people are living in a world all their own.
It does. They seem to believe almost anything unquestionably whatsoever, and they're obviously seeing patterns, and it's great to have some scientific evidence to say what's actually happening. The really interesting thing for me is this illusory pattern perception is something we all have, and it's evolution that's given us this. Because when we were apes, our ancestors were apes living up in trees, and that if the grass rattled, we needed to know, was it a lion or a snake or something. So somehow evolutionary we started to see these patterns, and it was a defense mechanism, and the people who survived, the animals and apes, and then people who survived, were the ones who actually had this stronger in them, because obviously the ones who didn't, they would jump down and probably get eaten by the lion or the saber-tooth,
and get to the point where the grass in the savannah would wave a bit, and they would like scuttle up a tree because that might be a lion.
Yeah.
It's like we get scared of noises in a dark house.
Yeah, definitely.
Same
definitely.
thing.
We've all experienced this. Everyone's looked up at a cloud and seen a face in a cloud or something. So just imagine that, and that is what is happening to these people, but on a hyper level. They see patterns in everything.
Or a face on Mars.
Yeah, face on Mars, on the moon.
That would be cool
pyramids.
if the face on Mars was real, but I don't think it is some.
No, the close-up pictures don't look quite so convincing.
Yeah. And the article goes on to explain this. For example, you might have a dream about an elderly relative and then receive news the following day that the relative has passed away. For some people, that would be enough to conclude that their dreams can predict the future. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but you can understand that some people will think, this happened, that happened. I was thinking of so-and-so, the phone rang. And these don't happen every day, but when they do happen, you remember them, don't you?
Well, the thing is, we don't remember all the times that our brain was thinking about that relative. It would have been doing it untold number of times, and you're just not registering it. It's not staying in your memory, but because something happened, it's like you're thinking of someone, the phone rings.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, it's just a coincidence.
I mean, I used to do it too. It's exciting to think that you've tapped into some power, because sometimes, life can be a bit dull and unpredictable. And you like to think, I've got some predictive power. I can control my future a little bit.
Yeah, and it is a little bit sad when you're younger and you believe this stuff and you're like, yeah, I can do it. But when you try to make the links, they're not there anymore. The links seem to dissipate, and they're not there. And conspiracy theorists don't have that. When the evidence is put in front of them that it's not there, the backfire effect comes in, and they don't listen to what you're trying to say, and they just keep seeing the patterns.
These experiments, they had a whole series of experiments which they did at these 2 universities. One of them involved pattern spotting in modernist artworks. One particular artist, Victor, again I'm going to mispronounce it, Vasarely, whose geometric works have obvious patterns, and Jackson Pollock, whose paint splatters are much more random. and any patterns spotted are more likely to be imaginary. So the article goes on to say that curiously, conspiratorial and supernatural beliefs are only correlated with pattern spotting in Pollock's work. That's the splatters of paint. Whereas people who spotted geometric patterns showed no specific inclinations towards any irrational beliefs. Overall, this study has generated some pretty compelling evidence that our need to make sense of the world, and that's the important thing here, by generating patterns really goes into overdrive in those who veer towards conspiracy theories.
And a lot of people, I've read so many stories saying facts don't work, backfire pattern, confirmation bias. Now we're talking about this illusory pattern stuff. Actually, my personal experience, anecdotal as it is, is that actually I have turned a few people from being conspiracy theorists just by talking to them long enough, giving them the facts, showing them the patterns that are really happening and the ones they're missing. And this all comes down to the fact that the brain, we know now the brain is very elastic actually. We can open up pathways that weren't being used. So people's brains can change over time. I used to be into conspiracy theories when I was younger, and I'm not anymore, because now I learned more about science, I learned more about the scientific method.
And it's exciting as well to think, you know, the powers that be are all colluding to hide something from me, the little person, but the little person, I figured it out.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You know.
Especially if you've got a few people confirming that a little group of you, wow, yeah, you're right. But the great thing about conspiracy theories, I love them. I love them, and I love trying to debunk them. But some of them are true. There are conspiracies. There are conspiracies.
Except in Washington.
But it doesn't mean it doesn't mean just because one conspiracy is true, they're all true. This is the way a lot of people seem to go. It's the same with science. So science got this wrong, so all science is wrong.
Well, exactly. I mean, I have a friend who, over the years, he got more and more into conspiracy theories. And only recently I realized that every conspiracy theory that you've heard of, he subscribes to. So we didn't land on the moon. Chemtrails are trying to change our DNA. You know, lizards rule the world. You name it, that's it. And if there's anything which disproves it, that's been faked. That can easily be faked.
Yeah, they absolutely won't take any evidence on face value, unfortunately. I think it's personally, I just think it's being able to talk to those people for long enough. Some of the rants I get in on Facebook, I know they're not helpful, because I'm not going to change that person's view because they're not sitting in front of me, so I can't have a rational conversation with them. But I do it for the audience watching. Hopefully they will be able to see the two sides, and I sort of like give links to look at, give reputable sites, explain why just because something's in a so-called journal, it doesn't mean it's a scientific paper, because there's magazines all over the world now where you pay to put something called a scientific journal, and it's not peer-reviewed.
No.
There is no evidence behind it anyway. It's just a money-making exercise, and it's actually really detrimental to people's trust in science, unfortunately, or the scientific method. So don't give up on your conspiracy theorist friends. It's not their fault, but keep pushing them.
Just challenge them, yeah. I mean, just say, okay, then how do you imagine that this conspiracy of silence could have taken place? Would this involve all the pilots' family and grandchildren and everything, referring to the pilots of the people who pilot the planes spreading the chemtrails? Or the moon conspiracy, how many people had to be in on this, and how do they keep it quiet?
Well, the moon conspiracy is one of the best ones, because it would have took thousands upon thousands of people to actually keep that quiet, and it would actually be more difficult to actually keep it as a conspiracy than it would have actually done it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't get into too many heated arguments. Just keep putting the evidence forward. Keep firm. Keep your point of view, and we can bring some of these people around, and they can become advocates for science. Yeah,
I mean, as you know, I talk to religious people in the street, or they talk to me, and they sometimes come up with some very outrageous things, and you just calmly respond with questions and logic.
Yep, and every little fact is a little pin, and given long enough, hopefully, their bubble slowly gets deflated.
Okay, so we're going to leave the world of conspiracy theories just for a moment, and we're going to look at another article. This comes from Hemant Mehta and Patheos. Hemant Mehta is, of course, a very prolific writer, friendly atheist, and this is students who opt out of Irish religious ed classes can't learn anything else. Now, obviously, this is set in Ireland, and 90% of the schools are run by the Catholic Church. I actually went to one of these for a couple of years when I lived over there. And the great thing about them is every other day is a religious holiday and you have a day off. So that's one good thing about it. This is all about the problem of opting out of religious ed. So if, for instance, you have to go to religion class and you or your parent decides to opt out, the alternative to sitting through these religious indoctrination classes is that kids are left to sit at the back of the class during the religious instruction. They're often prohibited from studying other subjects. Some stipulate that wearing headphones or completing other schoolwork is banned. So, okay, you can sit in back, but you can't do anything else.
It seems very strange, doesn't it? It's just like, no, you can't learn something that the people taking the religious studies isn't learning. It seems very strange to hold people back who...
Now, here's a conspiracy, I think.
Yeah, maybe so. But Ireland's very quickly becoming a secular country.
Oh, yeah.
And there's tons and tons of atheists now. I mean, they're turning their back on religion more than any other country in the world, as quickly as they possibly can, it seems. So the government's going to have to do something about this, because it seems completely unfair that they're not giving these kids the opportunity to use that time productively.
Why wouldn't they want them to learn, I don't know, science or do their science homework or maths or anything in the back of the room?
I saw your tongue firmly in your cheek there.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they want them to learn science?
Or are they hoping that they will sort of like still listen and hear some of this?
Yeah. The worst case scenario is it a shaming technique in front of the rest of the class to shame them into coming back into the class. It's not good what they're doing. I mean, there is definitely, we're all kids and we're all remember at school feeling the odd one out. No one likes to be the odd one out. So if you're sitting at the back of a class, not being able to take part and not being able to do anything else, it's not good.
The article goes on to say that the Irish government says they're looking to change the rules so that the kids who aren't sitting through religious education classes aren't just wasting time, but what that will entail isn't obvious. Will they take a separate class? If so, what will they learn instead? Who will teach it? It's not apparent. So, but given the way more and more Irish people are non-religious than ever before, it's about time this issue was resolved. And I think I agree with him at Meta here.
Well, there would be one easy way of resolving it: take the church-run schools under a state-run, and take the churches out of them completely.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with learning about religions. Obviously, it's a topic I'm fascinated by. What do Hindus believe? What do Jains believe? How has this affected the world and made it the way it is, and that kind of thing. Couldn't that be part of history class or?
But absolutely important that people know about what different religions believe in. But a lot of these classes are indoctrination. It's
more like a church sermon.
Yeah.
I've sat through a couple of them, and yeah, it did seem more like Sunday school.
Yeah, definitely. That's what it was like when I was at school. I am told in England now it's not as bad as it used to be, so that's good news.
Yeah, because you've got the religious assemblies, which are still required, aren't they?
A lot of schools don't. They may be required, but a lot of schools don't even do them anymore. The danger in the UK is actually there's a lot of schools being taken into Church of England, run by the Church of England, and that's really dangerous because they are literally doing that to indoctrinate young children because they are losing bums on pews left, right, and centre.
Yeah, so for a lot of people who don't know about what goes on in England, this has gone on for I don't know how many decades, perhaps forever, where there's something called religious assembly, or just assembly as they call it. Everybody meets in the gym before the day officially starts, before classes start. And there is some sort of religious talk or song or something like that?
Yeah,
right?
there used to be, there would be a prayer and a hymn or something, and then some sort of little story that would relate somehow to the Bible and the Good Samaritan story or something like that. Leaving out all the bad stuff, of course. They don't tell you all that.
It's more and more difficult to do that because we've got a growing populations of people of other faiths, especially like places in London. You have a lot of Muslim children. They're not going to.
No, and the state-run schools have pretty much stopped doing it.
Yeah,
stopped doing it. But the danger is that now the Church of England are heavily getting into running schools, and the councils are handing over state schools to be run by the Church of England, which is incredibly worrying.
And the whole faith school menace, as Richard Dawkins would call it, that seems to be on the rise again in this country. Is that right?
Yeah, the UK government are very much in favour of faith schools, which just seems madness to me.
Like
I mean, if you want to see
segregation almost.
it does become segregation, unfortunately, because they're coming up with schools that are specific religions, and I don't think you create a cohesive society by creating division.
No, perhaps that's something we should look into in a future episode. Like some of these schools, like a lot of the Hasidic Jewish schools, they just spend the entire day learning the Torah and learning that the world just outside the door is totally evil.
Yeah, it's definitely something. It'd be interesting to do an in-depth show on this, because those poor kids from those schools, they come up with no skills whatsoever.
No, that's it.
It's really damaging to them as human beings.
What do they do? I mean, do they, I don't know, read the Torah for a living? I don't know.
Yeah, well, the women are obviously just then go into houses and create babies and do as their husbands tell them to.
Yeah, it's not just the Jews. This goes across the board with so many different faiths, isn't it? Yeah, definitely something we should look into. Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. That was really interesting, and no doubt there'll be some more fascinating and perhaps frustrating articles coming out in the next week, which we will bring to the audience on Talk Belief News and put our own particular spin on it.
Yep. It's good just to chuck a few questions around, make people think for themselves, and if you disagree with what we're saying, let us know. It's always interesting. We'll always change our mind if you give us evidence.
Yeah, we love every comment that you make in the comment section. Thank you so much for the support of this show so far, and we love all the likes. We certainly like the subscribes, and if you want to help us on Patreon, that's fantastic. And the most important thing is that you listen and engage and enjoy the show, and we certainly hope that you're doing that. So I'm going to say goodbye, and goodbye to you, Neil, but we'll be back.
See you soon.